بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم أسأل الله تبارك وتعالى أن يجعل نياتنا خالصة لوجه الكريم السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. We welcome you all to another session and gathering of the Black Imams Roundtable. To my left is the great Imam of Camden, New Jersey, the guardian of truth and the protector of the poor, Imam of the Boombat, Faheem Lee.
Assalamu alaikum. What up, though?
And below us in location, but above us in status, in intellect, in genius, is the Imam genius, Imam Naeem Abdullah. And I am, of course, your lowly servant, Amin Muhammad, so-called Imam. Boo. And we make up the Black Imams. As you can see tonight, I'm planning on relaxing. So tonight's discussion is the life and legacy of Al-Hajj Malik Shabazz, also known as Malcolm X, as this is the 58th year anniversary of his assassination, rahimahullah rahmatan wasi'ah. And we felt that it would not be robbery that we took this night to reflect on his life and legacy and to draw some lessons. And we want your input and your comments and your questions and your statements and your thoughts, because the life of Al-Hajj Malik Shabazz is something that we still need to realize and benefit from and extract lessons that we can use in the struggle, which I believe we're still in. I think that we're not too far out of 1965 or the 60s. It's just more complicated, but the situation at its foundational root is the same. So I think lessons from the life and legacy of Al-Hajj Malik Shabazz would do us good in our present work. So as we always do, we remind you of our commitment to support our efforts. And we request a minimum, what is it, $5 or $10?
Today's request ain't yesterday's request. $20.
As the Imam of the Boom Bap said, we make a general request for $20 from each person to keep the work for today. Today's special rate. Inshallah. And if you cannot do it, do as much as you can, because we have a lot of work in continuing the legacy of Malcolm X in our community, which is desperately needed. So I'll pass it to the Imam of the Boom Bat. 1, 2, 3, Imam Boom Bat, get on the mic and rock the MIC. I don't have no bars. 0.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillah wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulihi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Wa man tabi'ahum bi ihsani ila yawmiddin wa ba'd. Alhamdulillah, as you all know, I'm Imam of the Boom Bap. I'm also AKA Fa Curry, the Garden State Warrior. You know what I mean? Shoot your lights out in the gym. MashaAllah. So we'd like to welcome you all to tonight's broadcast. You've already met our esteemed Imams, and I'm going to go first because we have a nice presentation by Imam Naeem, and of course, some very inspirational words from Imam Amin, alhamdulillah. So as you know, we're talking about the life and the legacy of Al-Hajj Malik al-Shabazz, better known as Malcolm X, rahimahullah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala enlighten his grave. And we thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for sending us Brother Malcolm, to show us, what integrity what it is to have integrity as a black man in the lost found wilderness of North America. MashaAllah. So tonight I want to start off. I remember, when we talked about history, my first encounter, the first time that I heard about Malcolm X, and the first time that I heard about Malcolm X, I didn't know it was Malcolm X. So I don't know if you all know during the hip hop era, like the early 80s, there was this song that I didn't know at that time, but I remember the song. It was an instrumental. And the song used to go, Malcolm X, no sellout. You all remember that song? Malcolm X, no sellout.
I remember that, Fa Curry.
Yeah.
Well, he was too young in those days.
He couldn't come off the porch, right? So the song was an instrumental. And now with all of this information, you can go back and look up the artist. Because back then, you didn't know what the artist looked like unless you went to the show or they came to your town. You know what I mean? So, or the names on the flyer, but you didn't know what they looked like. So this artist's name who made this record, his name was Keith LeBlanc. Keith LeBlanc. He was an artist, a drummer, and a producer, a white dude. He was a white dude, right? And he did this song. It's called No Sellout, and his moniker was Malcolm X, but his name was Keith LeBlanc, Leblanc. So he made this song as an instrumental in 1983. And this was one of the first songs to mark the early usage of sample-based compositions in popular music. And it was the first song to sample Malcolm X. It was the first song to sample Malcolm X.
That sounded so good coming out your mouth. Can you say that again?
What?
Sample what?
It did, didn't it, right? You gotta go back, you gotta repeat that.
It's called sample-based composition. So, of course, as you know, the history of hip hop, they used to take break beats from old songs and rap over them. And then as it started to develop, they started sampling these songs and looping the songs where you really couldn't tell what the sample was. But this artist, Keith LeBlanc, he did an instrumental of a song that was about 12 minutes long, and he took excerpts from Malcolm X's speeches. And so one of the hooks was Malcolm X, no sellout, and then another portion of his speech would be in the song. So I remember hearing this song when I was younger, but I didn't know it was Malcolm X. All I knew was the hook, no sellout, and I remember Malcolm X, no sellout, and I had no idea who Malcolm X was. So this is like 83, and I remember clearly hearing the song around 1984, So, and then it would be much later, like in 80, I think it was 88, when I first went down to a youth program, Jamesburg, and I read the autobiography of Malcolm X. So I was 17 when I first read the autobiography of Malcolm X, and I was really taken aback because when you read his story, it just resonates with us so much. A young black man coming through the school system, going through poverty, going through things, that we can relate to nowadays. You know what I mean? When he was growing up in the 30s and 40s, in the 30s actually, and you know, being, you know, on state assistance, and you know, some of the stuff he said in his autobiography about, he said that he thought they were so poor that he thought No Frills was a name brand. You know? And so then some of the things about when he went to school and they discouraged him, you know, because of the systematic racism, they discouraged him from him really reaching his full potential. So then it became a turnoff, you know, and just like many of our black boys nowadays, they're very intelligent, they're very smart, you know, all they have to do is be channeled in the right direction, but somebody's, you know, disrupting their greatness by telling them that they can only do this or they can't do this, or it's not possible for them to do these kind of things. You understand what I'm saying? So, you know, Malcolm X, as he wrote in the book, that he could have been a lawyer, you know, he could have been a lawyer, but his 8th grade teacher discouraged him, told him he could never do it. And then around that time, you know, he started getting caught up in the street life and all those things. And then, you know, the transformation he did once he entered into the Nation of Islam. So that was my first experience with the legacy of Malcolm X, with that song, and then reading his autobiography. And then just when I got as an adult, you know, going through the system again, just becoming, you know, intrigued with his writings and his speeches and reading all of his speeches, you know. And, you know, one of his more memorable speeches is one that's called The Ballad or the Bullet. You all remember this one, The Ballad or the Bullet? So this is a speech that he did in April of 1964. And so he did the speech a couple of times. He did it in Cleveland and then he did it in Detroit. So this is like a month after he split from the NOI, right? And so he did the speech in Cleveland, but the one in Detroit was the one that was more memorable, that 2,000 people came out to hear Malcolm. 2,000 people came out to hear Malcolm X hear the speech, and he delivered the speech called The Ballad or the Bullet. And so it's one of his more well-known classic speeches, you know. And so one of the so many memorable lines in there. And if you think about the speech, the topic was the ballad or the bullet. Malcolm was basically talking about, in essence, that we need to really control the politics, you know, and if we don't have full control of them, you know, because they've already shown us that they really wasn't for us. Then if we don't have the ballot in order, then the next thing is the bullet. And what he meant by the bullet is that you're having a generation of black men who are tired of the system, tired of the oppression, who is not ready, you know, to really trying to compromise, who's not really trying to integrate or trying to be in this white man system, you know. And so one of the lines that he said, there's so many memorable lines. He said, anytime you're living in the 20th century in 1964, he meant, and you walking around here saying we shall overcome, he said, the government has failed you. He said, that's part of what's wrong with you. You do too much singing. Today it's time to stop singing and start swinging. It's time to stop singing and start swinging. So he was, you know, alluding to that it was time to, you know, stop trying to integrate into, you know, these people who have already shown us throughout the ages that they have no care for us, that they already only saw us as shadow, you know, as products, you know, not even human. And they developed so many sciences and so many systems based around us, you know, not being free. You know, us being free was never really part of the plan, you know. And so in education and science and all of these things, they came up with all of these, you know, ideas to subjugate us, you know. How many of you remember, and some of you remember, they had a science called phrenology? I know the Imam Genius knows. Come on, man. They had a science called phrenology, and they alluded to it in the movie The Django when they talked about the skulls of humans, and they were saying that the black man's skull, that his brain was smaller, so in essence he was dumber, and he was only qualified to do menial work and be a servant of the white folks. You know, so they tried to develop a science saying that the reason why we were slaves because we weren't smart enough to be anything else. And they try to promote that as science, you know. So, and some of the other things that you'll find out. But in essence, Malcolm X was talking about in this speech, the Ballad of the Bullet. And one of the things that he highlighted, and it's one of the problems today, that we still sometimes, you know, somehow Black people are still victims of this. He was talking about Republicans and Democrats. When he talked about Republicans and Democrats, and he called the Democrats the Dixiecrats, you know, meaning people that from down south, the racist people, you know what I mean, who were openly racist, you know, and let you know that they were racist. So he lived during the time of people like, I think the senator was named Goldwater or something. Some of these people that they were promoting openly racist policies under their jurisdictions and letting you know that they were basically saying, Black people, you don't have a chance with us, you know. So then on top of that, when he talked in the speech, he was saying about Republicans and Democrats being both sides of the same coin. So he said the Republicans in the North and the Democrats, he said that they were like the political foxes. And in the South, they were the political wolves. So in the wolves, you know, the wolf, it ain't no secret about the wolf. He gonna try to eat you, you know. But the fox is more sly, he's more sinister, he's more slick. So he said this is how the people in the North were with the Republicans. But they were both about racism. They were both about segregation. They were both about subjugation. And so when you're talking about, he was saying like, we'll keep trying to tie into both of these political parties and neither one of them have our best interests in hand. And then even nowadays, when Black people are voting, what's the party that they go with? The Democrats. And he mentions in the speech about how they control the Black. What, you said something, man?
Trump.
So he was saying something about how they control the Black leaders, that they get the Black leaders together, take them out for coffee, and then they will promote the agenda that they want them to promote to you. And so then they use it.
They can never pass up the coffee.
Huh?
He said, and they'll never pass up the coffee.
They'll never pass up the coffee. He said a few things that I'm just trying to summarize, but the speech is powerful. Even if you go back and listen to it today, 1964, that's over 60, almost 60 years, you know, 59 years, right? And that's 59 years? Yeah, that's 59 years. Almost 58. Almost 60 years later, you know, this is still powerful.
59 years from the speech, yeah.
Yeah, so he's talking about, and even now, many people are talking about that we should do away with the two-party system because we are so lost in the ballot that we thinking that our vote counts and we trying to hold on to the past. Oh, our ancestors died for voting. We should vote, but we have no power with the vote. And we giving our vote to people who have no interest in us. And like the Democrats, they appear to have our interest, but then, once they get in office, they forget about the people who put them there, who they supposed to represent. And it happens every time. And so Malcolm X used some of the speech, some of the language in the speech. He said that we're political chumps. He told us we were chumps, that if we keep going for this same thing, we voting Democrat because we think the Republicans are racist. But the Republicans already let us know, who they are. You know what I mean? We keep going for these Democrats that are the real wolves. And if you study the two-party system, it was the Republicans who started out as being helping the Black people. And somehow down the line, we think the Republican means racist. And even now we're talking about Trump and all this stuff. And that's a whole nother thing, because, Trump in 24. At least he ain't seen now like this other boy, but that's another topic of discussion. And so in this speech, Malcolm X, he was talking about the political wolves and the political foxes. And then he said another famous line from this. He said, "You and I have never seen a democracy. All we've seen is hypocrisy." That was one of the lines. We have never seen a democracy. All we've seen is hypocrisy. So in other words, he was saying, You know, if we're not going to control our own neighborhoods and our own businesses where we profit, then America should be ready for that young black man and black woman who was angry, who was tired, and who was ready to go to war and give up their lives, you know, to end this nonsense that we're going through, the end the lies, the end the subjugation, the end the trickery, the end the technology, you know, all of that stuff, because that's all it is. It's a facade to act like they care for us. In reality, they don't. And then what the evidence is how our people are today. You know, you can't even tell the difference from 1964 to 2023 when you go to the hood. When you go to the hood, you know, and of course, you know, the bullet thing, you know, kind of the principle was good, but then it backfired because we end up tearing up our own neighborhoods in some instances out of anger and misplaced anger, where we should have had a channel, you know, and we should never give up that anger and that vigor, you know. But Malcolm X talked about this. He had another line. He said, when you choose between the Republican and the Democrats, he said, you're going to choose between the northern dog and the southern dog. He said, because either dog that you choose, you'll still be in the doghouse. Either dog that you choose, a northern dog or a southern dog, you'll still be in the doghouse. So then he said, it's the ballot of the bullet, it's liberty or death, it's freedom for everybody or freedom from nobody. And then another famous line that I don't think it was from that speech that I recall, by any means necessary, you know. And so when we bring it home to how we are as Muslims and black Muslims and being products of this struggle and product of the systematic racism and subjugation and marginalization of our people, you know, now we have that fire and that zeal as being black people, being subjects in this country, being victims of hypocrisy, victims of the Republicans, victims of Democrats, victims of Americanism. And now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed us with the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you know. And so now we have to use that and have a firm resolve. So as we, you know, commemorate the legacy of Brother Malcolm X, Al-Hajj Malik Al-Shabazz, rahimahullah, that thing should ring in our head. Malcolm X, no sellout, you know. So what did he mean by no sellout? You know, he meant that we should be uncompromising and unwavering in our beliefs and have a firm resolve and be ready, even if it costs us our lives, to lay down our lives so that we can have freedom for everybody or nobody gets freedom. You know what I mean? Be ready to give our lives, our properties. And this is what we learn in Islam, that the believers are the ones who jahidu fi amwalihim wa anfusihim, who strive with their wealth and their lives, being ready to give up everything that they have at their disposal, first to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to be in service of the people that they are a part of, you know. And this is some of the things that we try to ignite with our people, you know, be with our people, have a power block, have a connection with each other, that we deal with each other. We control our narrative. We control our neighborhoods. We control our economics. We're not dependent on people who are not related to us, that we can't connect to. Leaders that are out of touch. Leaders who don't know us. Leaders who don't engage with us. And the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ puts, you know, all of that in perspective. He lived with them. He suffered with them. He starved with them. You know, he went through all of the trauma that they went through, and yet he still had firm resolve. You know, and this is what he got from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And one of the things, as I conclude, you know, that we should be thinking about this concept of no sellout, uncompromising, being unwavering in our beliefs and principles. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, he told the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, فَإِذَا أَزَمْتَ فَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ, that when you have come to a decision, a firm decision, this azam means like to have a firm resolve about something, then put your trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So for us, we already made the decision to be Muslim. We already made the decision to be servants. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose us in his mercy to be to make that choice. And now we just have to have this firm resolve and have trust in Allah who's subhanahu wa ta'ala and move out and by any means necessary, make sure that we develop and that we grow and that we have a legacy that we can leave, that people will be talking about us and what we're trying to do and what we try to accomplish 60 years down the line, inshallah, even if we have that much more time, because we, all these alamatu sa'at, all of these signs of the hour showing up so great, we should already assume that we don't have a lot of time. And the little time that we do have, we got to get busy. We got to get busy and make sure that we stick together and keep our focus on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and taking care of each other. So I'll stop there, inshallah. I hope I didn't go too long. And no sellout. Okay.
Alhamdulillah. Barakallah fiqh. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa afdalu salatu wa tamu tasneem ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. Wa radiyallahu ta'ala an asatidil tabi'een wa ulama al-amalin wa a'immatul arbatul mujtahideen wa muqallidihim ila yawmiddin. Amma ba'd. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone. I want to begin with this verse of the Quran. And normally, whenever you hear Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, the so-called Sunni Muslims talk about Al-Hajj Malik Shabazz, nowadays, you hear them mention this verse from the Quran. وَلَا تَقُولُوا لِمَنْ يُقْتَلُ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ أَمْوَاتٌ بَلْ أَحْيَاءٌ وَلَكِنْ لَا تَشْعُرُونَ. And do not say of those who were slain or killed in the way of Allah that they are dead. No, rather they are alive. You just do not perceive it. And mention that verse because he is seen by us and even the non-Muslims as the Black American Muslim martyr, the Shaheed. And this verse speaks about the Shuhada, those who are killed in the way of Allah, that they are not dead. And do not say that they are dead, but rather they are alive. And we know that, or how they are alive, by explanation from our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that they are literally alive inside of birds flying around in Jannah, not Jannah, in heaven. And so when we talk about Islam in America and martyrs, Al-Hajj Malik Shabazz, Malcolm X is counted from among them. And we pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala recognizes him as being a martyr. I was thinking while Imam Faheem was speaking, I wanted to get off and just listen to the Ballad of the Bullet again, because so many of the speech was coming back to me. And I was thinking about when you said we need to stop singing and start swinging. And then he said, he, subhanAllah, he had a way. He said, Cassius Clay can sing, but singing didn't make him the heavyweight champion of the world. Swinging made him the heavyweight champion of the world. Allahu Akbar. Like you, Imam Faheem, my first time hearing Malcolm was through hip hop. But I didn't know it was Malcolm, just like you didn't know it was Malcolm. For me, it came from Public Enemy. I think this song was Bring the Noise, Too Black, Too Strong. Years later, I come to find out that that's a slowed down portion from his speech he gave, the message to the grassroots, when he was talking about the March on Washington and how the people didn't infiltrate it. They didn't integrate it. They infiltrated. And he talked about how the March on Washington really started as a grassroots movement. They were talking about marching to Washington, not letting any airplanes land, laying down on the roads, shutting down the government. That was revolution, as he was saying. And then people started infiltrating it and getting into it and funding it, right? The people they're marching against actually started funding the march. This is subhanAllah. And Malcolm, he broke all that down, the March on Washington. He literally broke all that down. And I heard from his sister, Hilda, in an interview, that while he was saying that, when he was giving that speech, that he had receipts. He was showing newspaper articles when he was saying it. He was saying that basically the big leaders, the big six as they were known, were given $1.5 million. And then he's, in his unique way of speaking, he said how when the march began, first it was, it was hot, it was hostile. But when water is hot, when he compared it to coffee, and he said, the coffee is too strong. What you do? You integrate it with cream. And I'm not even going to try to imitate him, but just all of these are available on YouTube. Just go to Message of the Grassroots. That speech that he gave was about a year before he gave the ballot or the bullet that Imam Faheem spoke about. The first full speech I heard from Malcolm was that ballot or the bullet. And for me, it was a moment that changed my life. Those moments because you remember exactly what you were doing and where you were at when it happened to you. I remember exactly where I was at. I remember exactly where I was going when I heard the ballot or the bullet. Changed my life. And after that, I became like an addict, and everything that had Malcolm's name on it, I got it. Back then, it was cassette tapes and VHS tapes and stuff like that. So any speech I could get, I got it. Any book I could get, I got it. All of that. Well, alhamdulillah. What I want to focus on today, because we talk about a lot of stuff when usually we talk about Malcolm. When we talk about Malcolm, we talk about how great of a speaker he was. We talk about, how he died, who killed him. We talk about, his Islam and things like this. But what I want to talk about today is Malcolm X, the builder, rahimahullah. Now, this is not a long slideshow, and I don't want to be the only one talking. So I'm going to ask my brother Imams that if I make a point or come across a point or just something comes to your mind and you want to say something, please break in and say something. Please just break in and make your point, inshallah. So here on this slide, it says Haj Malik Shabazz, also known as Malcolm X, is well known to us for many things. We know him as a great orator, researcher, debater, one of strong intellect, and even a martyr. But most of us are oblivious to the fact that he was also a builder. This aspect of his life, I think, is downplayed by many who know better for obvious reasons. Here, I have Malcolm's parents here, and I put this here for a reason, because Malcolm's parents, I think people that really know Malcolm, they know that both of his parents were part of Marcus Garvey's movement. It was part of the Garvey movement, the UNIA. What the UNIA stand for again? United Negro Improvement Association?
Uh-huh.
Okay, alhamdulillah.
Come on, genius. You know you spot on. Let's go.
I put where I'm at. I need to read this thing. Give me 1 second. It says his mother, Helen Louise Helen Little, from 1894 to 1989. She was from Granada. A lot of people don't know that. And this is coming. What I'm mentioning is these. A couple of these things is from Malcolm's nephew's book called "The Seventh Child," a family memoir of Malcolm X. And this is one of my favorite books about him because it's coming from a little bit more a personal angle. And the author is obviously his nephew, Rodnell Collins, who is the son of Malcolm's sister Ella, who I'll mention later, inshallah. He says here, they knew that Earl Sr. was deeply committed supporter of Marcus Garvey, the founder of the New York City-based United Negro Improvement Association. In the late teens and early 1920s, that was the largest Black political organization in the United States. No other Black political organization, past or present, ever approached its size of over 1 million members and followers. Some say the nation got like 500,000. Allah knows best. Because Garvey had such a profound influence on on Uncle Malcolm's parents and on Elijah Muhammad, and because they, in turn, had such a profound influence on Malcolm, it's important to know some of the positions he advocated that so alarmed white supremacists. Much can be gleaned from statements attributed to Garvey in the book The Philosophy and Opinions of Marcus Garvey, compiled by his wife, Amy Jacques Garvey. Garvey, who was eventually deported to his home in Jamaica, declared, I'm going off from that. This is something else that's very key, and I don't want y'all to miss out on that. He mentions, give me a second. He said Earl and Louise Little met and married in Philadelphia, and probably, Ma believed, could have stayed there and had a reasonably comfortable life. Ma is that he's referring to his mother, Ella Collins, Malcolm's sister. Instead, they involved themselves in the struggle for racial justice and equality in the United States. During 11 years of marriage, they had 7 children, 5 boys and 2 girls. The children's places of birth show how often the Littles moved in order for Earl Sr. to find employment, or because hostile reaction to their political activities made it judicious to do so. Uncle Wilfred was born in Philadelphia, 1920. Aunt Hilda, 1922. Uncle Filbert, 1923. Uncle Malcolm, 1925, in Omaha, Nebraska. Uncle Reginald, 1927, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Uncle Wesley, 1928. Aunt Yvonne, 1929, in Lansing, Michigan. Earl Sr. also fathered 3 other children by his first wife, Daisy Mason. He says Ma, meaning his mother, Ella Collins, 1914, Aunt Mary, 1915, and Earl Jr., 1917. Louise Little gave birth to Uncle Robert, whose father was a man who befriended her and her children after Earl Sr.'s murder. Uncle Malcolm was Earl Sr.'s 7th child. I mention that because in that book, it also mentions that Malcolm's older brothers, meaning his mother and their other siblings, were very conscious that their mother and father, their parents, were Garveyites. They were very conscious about that. It wasn't like it was something they didn't know or found out later upon research. They was very conscious that they were Garveyites. And a lot of them joined the Nation of Islam. Because it had a lot of Garvey's principles in it. And that's one thing that a lot of people leave out. And many researchers say that even Elijah Muhammad himself was in Garvey's movement. So a lot of things that the nation, for example, gets credit for initiating, a lot of it comes from Marcus Garvey's movement. And so, Malcolm's parents and possibly even Elijah Muhammad were all at one time Garveyites. And Malcolm's mother was a writer and the editor for one of the Garvey papers. And Kevin said, can I please post a link to this article? This is not an article. This is some excerpts from this book right here, The Seventh Child, by his it's one of my favorite books. Just in preparing these slides, it made me want to read it again. If you know anything about Marcus Garvey's movement and what they were about nation building, organizing, and all that kind of stuff. So Malcolm had this in his blood. And so I want to talk about a few things about Malcolm building within the nation. I want to talk about how Malcolm was a dynamic recruiter. They used to call it fishing for new recruits. He had massive fishing skills. He also opened up so many of the Nation of Islam's temples. I don't really want to put a number to it because I like to do my own research in regard to that. But one research site says that Malcolm personally was involved in opening over 100 Nation of Islam temples. Allah knows best. I know he was personally involved in opening at least more than a dozen Nation of Islam temples. So I want to talk about that. And also Malcolm created the Nation of Islam's newspaper called Muhammad Speaks in his basement in Queens, New York. That right there, what you see right there is a picture of where we at. A page from this book right here. Another book I think y'all should get. On the side of my people, on the religious life of Malcolm X. And I'm not going to read that whole page that's up there, but I just want to read this section where it says, remember, Malcolm comes home in August 1952 from prison. And so when he comes home, right, and I'm going to read here, Malcolm quickly noted that the combined attendance of Detroit and Chicago temples was only about 200. And at that time, they had about 8 temples already. Maybe y'all can help me out with the numbers. Temple number 1, Detroit. Temple number 2, Chicago. I don't know what 3 is. 4, I think, is DC. I don't know what 5 is. I don't know what 6 is. 7 is Harlem. And I don't know what 8 is.
I
But
know
I think
we the home of temple number 20.
Camden is 20?
Camden, New Jersey, temple number 20.
Atlantic City, Masjid Muhammad's temple number 10.
Ah. This is extremely important history. If anybody knows,
and we was established in 1955.
did Malcolm establish that one? Did he have a part in it or no?
He used to come here a lot, but there was an elder who established it, and they connected to New York later.
Ah, okay. So remember, he's just coming home, and between the 2 main temples, the 2 basically headquarters, the first one and 2, Chicago, he said only about 200. Though another 8 temples comprised the movement, its total membership at this time was only about 400. Encouraged by Elijah Muhammad's tableside declaration that the Detroit temple should have thousands of members and that the movement should be recruiting young people, Malcolm immediately began to give thought to how the nation could be expanded. Quote unquote, I made up my mind, Malcolm said later, that we were going to follow that advice. The first phase of Malcolm's ministry was marked by aggressive evangelization in the Detroit area. He made it his particular mission to expand the nation, beginning with temple number 1. And that's what he started doing, Wilfred Little recalled. He started the others to working with him and going out into the community and bringing people in to hear the teachings. And those will go out and bring in some more. And they just kept expanding. So that's all I want to read from that one. Let me mark my page. So you have to understand, Elijah Muhammad is around Malcolm's father's age. They're in the same age group. So Malcolm is a young boy. So if he was born in 25, and this is 1952, so he was what, 22 years old? Or my number's off? No, he was about 27 years old.
27.
So he's young. He came home August 7th, 1952. And so during this period, he's listening to all of the lectures that, all of the ministers are giving, including his brothers who were ministers. And he's reading everything. A lot of people think that he did exclusively that in the prison, but he was really get like a crash course, and he was on parole at this time, right? And then he finally got released. When he got released from parole, he really got on the road. But subhanallah, when you look at the sources, because remember, he spent time in Boston. He built up the numbers. So he went out into the community. Like a lot of us, the nation back at that time, they were insulated. They really kept to themselves. They were very small in numbers, right? Mark was like, no, we got to go out and get people. And this is the problem that we have even in the Muslim community now. Most Muslim communities, we're disconnected from the community. And so we just we're all, insulated amongst ourselves. So, Malcolm changed all that and he went out. He went out. Don't forget, y'all can chime in and add to it, man. And so here I just listed a few temples that was directly opened by Malcolm. And by Malcolm, because Temple 11 is Boston. A lot of times what Malcolm's methodology was, and again, we need to, in my opinion, we need to be doing the same thing. See, they were builders. So when Malcolm would go out and talking to the people, once he found someone that agreed with the message and was down with the movement, they would set up shop in that person's house. So they weren't waiting for a new temple, or that they would later call mosques. They weren't waiting for all that. Okay, we got one person. All right, the next meeting's happening in your house. The next meeting is happening in your house. And so temple number 11, was started out in a brother named Lloyd's house. And Malcolm came there, and after they got built up a certain amount of numbers, then they will go purchase a property. Sometimes they will rent a storefront and then purchase a property. Then came temple number 12, right? Same process. They were meeting in someone's house, and then when they got their numbers up, with temple number 12, Malcolm got some money up. Some other people put some money up, and then they got the place on Lancaster Avenue. I forgot the address, 4812 Lancaster Avenue. And then the nation eventually paid them back, all the people that put in that money. And so you see Springfield, Hartford, Atlanta, and on and on and on and on. Right? So you see building going on. They're not waiting for, how can I say? They're not waiting for anybody to come give them anything. And like somebody said in the comments, that Malcolm had that fire. That's extremely important, because when he first arrived on the set, he like, what? Like, where everybody at? Like, this is it? Nah, man, we need more people. And once he got the permission from Elijah Muhammad, he was off to the races. And so,
there's one thing that I want to add to that. That was something we was having a discussion yesterday about that. That all of the Black movements in the early days, they started like that. Grassroots movements, individual to individual to individual, and then they built their numbers. And I believe this is something we need to take, and I was indicating it the other day when I was saying, yeah, the Black Imams Roundtable will come, the Imams will come, but where you at in your individual thing? You got to start your own setting up, using your house, bringing stuff together, only as a few. And then the other thing is continuing to fund the efforts of da'wah insofar that people are free. One of the things, and I never like this though, when we talk about Al-Hajj Malik Shabazz or Malcolm X, we don't realize how integral the NOI system of supporting their mission was to him doing all that. He didn't never have to worry about going anywhere. They had the money. If you fast forward quickly, because what you said, once he got the approval from Elijah Muhammad, that's it. The funding's there, traveling, whatever you need to do, go do it. And he took great advantage of that financial machine that was behind him to do that work. The other thing is that if we're going to emulate that work, we have to remember we have to do the things that made him successful. And that means everybody having a common understanding that we all support. They all had a buy-in. Even if that buy-in was kind of false in terms of religiosity and religious practice, but they all understood the mission. I think why we don't get all the support, most of us don't understand the mission. And they had a common objective in that. And I think we need to look into that. One time, Imam Ali, just to top that off, they complained to Imam Ali, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, about different stuff that was happening during his khilafah, during his leadership. And they said, when we were in Abu Bakr and Umar and Uthman, we didn't have all this stuff. Now you're the leader, you see all this stuff, fitna. And Imam Ali said his famous statements. Abu Bakr, Umar, and Uthman, radiyallahu ta'ala anhum, they had men like me, and I have men like you. And I think when we look at Malcolm and his work, he was a worker, and he had soldiers with him. Them NOI boys went to work. When he called, they came, right? So he had that army behind him, and I think we shouldn't underestimate the importance of that support he had. Because when that support was taken away, you'll see that he didn't get the same thing done. When he was out of the NOI, his whole mission was collapsed. And if you remember, you might not like the wording, but the point was strong. When Farrakhan was giving his talk about the assassination of Malcolm X, he said, where was his soldiers? That would have never happened to him when he was with us. But those guys weren't there to protect him. And that's something I think we should really, really pay attention to, that organization and support is very critical to all that success you see. And I think that's something we shouldn't undermine, because if we think that just the individual by himself is going to do all that, that's not, no matter how good he is, it's not going to happen. And that's why you'll notice the Nation of Islam in its forms, in various forms, still exists, and the mission of Malcolm X don't exist no more at all. And what is it? I think the biggest thing is that support cast behind it. So I think we should highlight that as just one to think about, so that we will realize how important it is supporting our mission. That's just my thoughts.
And what you said,
that with my Sheikh Samir qualification, I may be right, I may be wrong. I'm wrong all the time.
And what you said was the whole motivation for me putting all of this together. I wanted to show this because, like you said, it's a machine behind him. And a lot of the components in the machine, right, Malcolm initiated. Like, for example, all of these masjids or mosques or temples that they was first called, right, many of them had businesses connected to them. And the one in Harlem, number 7, Malcolm is the one that got the license for them to be able to open a business next to it. So you see Malcolm, he's just not just giving speeches. He's very key in putting the components together to make this machine work.
Hold up, Imam. Drum roll. Introducing
Allahu Akbar.
Allahu Akbar.
Assalamu alaikum.
The champ is here.
Akil.
Wa alaikum assalam.
The professor emeritus. How they say that? Ain't that how they said?
Alhamdulillah. Very good. Alhamdulillah, I was listening in before I joined.
MashaAllah.
So you're going right after Imam Naeem's presentation. He has about 50 more minutes to go. Nice.
Nah, you could jump in right now because I
Yeah,
was
you
going
can jump
to
in
stay
right
on that
away.
point.
So the last part I had as I was coming in is when you were talking about how when Al-Hajj Malik was with the nation, part of their building and going to various communities were to build the local areas one-on-one, right? And then you build up your resources so that the traveling wasn't a problem for him. He took advantage of that infrastructure and then was able to continually to build the network of temples.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I didn't hear after that though, because I was trying to get the link and everything. That was up to the point that I heard.
Yeah, what was your thought about that though?
Alhamdulillah, I think it was good. I think part of what also was that made him successful is that he was able to speak the language of the people, right? Prior to Malcolm joining the nation was primarily people that were like kind of up in age. Malcolm, when he joined, being a young man himself, he was able to speak the language of the people. He knew the language of the street people, the jive talk, the speakeasies, the clubs. He knew that language. So he was able to articulate the agenda of the Nation of Islam, but in a language that the street people could gravitate to. So it's very important to be able to speak the language of the people, so to speak, so that you can attract people. You know what I'm saying? Everything you say can't be totally alien to the people, or else you're not gonna get a broad-based mass support like that.
I think that's an extremely important point. And to be able to do that, you need to have an intellect, and you need to be a critical thinker, because you have to
Absolutely.
be able to take doctrine and dogma and translate it into the language of the people. And so, and one thing that was unique about Malcolm is that he was able to put his own twist to it. He added a lot of stuff to his rhetoric that wasn't part of Nation of Islam curriculum, so to speak.
Oh, but a lot of it, right? Because he didn't get bogged down in the dogma of the Nation of Islam. What he would do is take certain tropes, right? And then he would build on that and make an honest intellectual critique of America, right? So you didn't hear, a lot of speeches of him, El-Hajj Malik, talking about the big head scientists, right? But what you did hear him have a lot of conversation about is how the American system is systemically oppressive towards Black people. See, that resonates with the everyday person so that they can say, hey, wait, this is something. And it resonates with them. You know what I'm saying? And this is also, I don't know if we want to say it here, but this is also,
Hey, this is the Black Imams Roundtable. We say whatever we want. We in charge.
This is also, like an indictment to the Sunni Muslims, right? Because whereas the nation was particularly addressing the needs of the oppression of the Black people, the Sunni Muslims, even though in the Quran it's very clear that you're supposed to speak out against oppression of those who have been targeted for oppression, we took that off the table. I'm talking about we as the Sunni Muslims, right? So that in and of itself shows you the differences. And like you were saying, he added his own spin to things, but it was still the same vein of, hey, we need to do things for ourselves, have our own things, right? protect ourselves. Especially after he left the nation, he moved even further, more radical than the nation in regards to protecting Black people against white supremacy. You didn't have a lot of that type of rhetoric that was going on at that time.
I want to throw something at you, Akil, just on the line you said, because I think it raises another point. Because as we talked about earlier, I don't know if you heard, that all Black movements, which Dr. Sherman Jackson called Black religion,
right?
Whether it was represented as Jewish, Hebrew, Israelite, Christian, Muslim, or nationalist, whatever movement in the early 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, even up to the 60s, right?
Mhm.
Any Black movement had an overtone of it's about Black people.
Right. Absolutely.
No matter what religion they were expressing. But here's the catch. So if you go prior to Malcolm's time, to Al-Hajj Malik Shabazz time, the Sunnis that were represented in the Black community, like Sheikh Izzuddin, they were connected to Black people and the Black struggle and the inner cities and the grassroots people. And they built, and their congregations were Black. I think when we say Sunnis, because Sunnis were like that across the board, the Darul Islam movement, these were Black people, right?
Right.
I think when there came a switch where we started thinking that real Islam represented Arabs or Asians, right? Or immigrants, we gave up our self-empowerment as African-American Muslims or American African Muslims who are descendants of African slaves, or however that term is, right? When we gave up the right to self-direct and lead ourselves as Muslims and gave that leadership over to others, we lost everything that we used to build on. What do you think about that?
Well, I'll be more pinpoint, right? So if you look at those organizations that existed prior to the 1970s, right, when we start having an influx of Sunni Orthodox teachers from other lands, right? One thing that happened, and you can see the dichotomy, is when the Trojan horse of Asabia being tied to nationalism got interjected into the Black community, that led to the divestment of Black concerns being on the table for the Sunni Muslims. So what it became was, I'm just Muslim, right? It was, I'm just Muslim. Those concerns of the inner cities and stuff like that can't be specifically tailored and addressed because those people are not Muslim. We are Muslim, right? It became a us versus them, the non-Muslim versus the Muslim and Black people, because the elephant in the room was always, you don't want to be a nationalist, right? Because Asabia, nationalism, is something that was abhorrent, right? Which this was a total mischaracterization of the word Asabia, and it's actually against the Quran to denigrate your own Shabab, your own people, your own tribe. Is Allah created the tribes of people. Allah created that. So how can you discount that? And that's something that, you know, the Sunni Muslims got to own that, because they allowed that to be interjected. And now, alhamdulillah, I do see a move to where it's like, no, these are people. So guess what? We're going to speak out about police brutality, and it don't have anything to do whether it was a Black man that was a Muslim or non-Muslim. He was Black and he was oppressed by this systematic oppression from white supremacy in America. Like that, we have to be able to just say that flat out.
Go ahead, Imam Naeem. You can continue. We getting ready started.
Allahu Akbar. Alhamdulillah. Akil, really the point that we're trying to drive home in this presentation that I'm giving, I'm really trying to drive home the fact that there was organization. Malcolm wasn't just only a speaker, an orator, an individual thinker, a debater, and all of these things that we know, but he was also a builder. And when you came in, I was sort of kind of in the middle of talking about how, you know, some examples of how he was actually building within the nation, right?
No
and
doubt.
The next thing I was going to mention is the fact that he started Muhammad Speaks in his basement in Queens, New York, in 1960 or 61, right? Because up until that time, the way they would get their message out in print media is that they would, you know, write and contribute articles to Black-owned publications such as the New Pittsburgh Courier, Amsterdam News, that were Black-owned publications, right?
And Pittsburgh Courier. Don't forget Pittsburgh Courier.
I just mentioned that. I said Pittsburgh Courier.
Oh, okay.
And the Amsterdam News.
Yep.
New York, Pittsburgh, you know. Allahu Akbar. Alhamdulillah. So him and Elijah Muhammad will contribute to these newspapers quite frequently, even after they started Muhammad Speaks. But you can see how Malcolm, he started that newspaper. And even now, I was just looking up and I see how even now people are trying to revise history and make it like he didn't start that paper.
Right. Well, in another twist of irony, right? He also helped with the formation of the FOI to what it became.
A lot of people don't know that. He used to train the FOI in the early days.
He was part of that, right? That's how he knew how they operated.
Can you elaborate more on that?
I'd rather not.
Speak on it, black man.
Oh, come on, man.
Are we going through this again, black man? All right, Akil, we're going to leave you alone. Whatever you choose to give us, we understand, you know, you can't speak like you would
what
like
I'm saying, what I'm saying
Black
is
Imam's Roundtable. It wouldn't be authentic if we don't, you know, step on a little toes here. Come on,
hey, man. We're starting to think
he assisted with the formation of it, you know what I'm saying, in certain aspects, you know what I'm saying, of implementing rules, right? And having people adhere to, you know, the program. They, you know, corrected people.
You know, subhanAllah, like for example, what you talked about. See, one thing that a lot of people inside, some people that actually met Malcolm and I heard this from people that met Malcolm and knew Malcolm, right? That Malcolm, he not only talked the talk, he walked the walk. So all of those rules that they had, he practiced it. And when he was in charge of a situation, if those rules were violated, he executed the punishment. Malcolm was a disciplinarian. Even Farrakhan said that he never saw him, you know, cutting his eye at another woman, never saw him eating between meals, none of that stuff. Right. And one thing that they mentioned, like the name Joseph Shah is a popular name, or Yusuf Shah later on, right? Who was the captain of the FOI in New York. There was a situation where he was accused of putting hands on his wife, and they literally had a trial, literally. And during that same trial, there was a few trials. There was one sister in the Nation of Islam who had her husband was in jail, and she was caught fornicating or committing adultery with another brother in the nation. They literally had a trial, and you know, they was allowed to testify and defend themselves. And they're talking about, like, listen, he was like, sister, you should be ashamed of yourself. Your husband is in prison right now. What do you think he would feel if he found out about this? And they were suspended and ostracized from the nation for a period of time. Then when they got to Captain Joseph, right? And this is a captain. This is like probably the second top dude in that temple. And you know, he asked him like, do how do you plead, basically? Guilty. So you don't deny that you did it, right? Right. And so like I think he got excommunicated for like 90 days. And then like he was serious about it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's stuff like that that made people not like him. Like, yo, like they used to say, if the old man dies and he take over, we can't be doing what we doing. Malcolm ain't
No,
having it.
he lived all of those rules.
Yeah.
But then also that force of conviction, other people see you, and then they're more apt to follow you as well because of that, right? Because
Yes.
they say, hey, this guy is doing it, and he's saying, hey, we should do it, and then he's actually living it and doing it. Then that's, there you go. But it's important that we talk about him being a builder because, some of the detractors of El-Hajj Malik will say, well, if he was so good, where are the fruit of his work in terms of institution sustainability and that type of thing, right?
Right.
And it's typically, coming from people that's holdovers, but it's like he was assassinated. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't like he got a chance to live out past his middle age. You know what I'm saying? 39, and you only having a year to do work. It's very hard to build the institutional structures that you need to in order for it to be perpetual, right? Although he
Right.
did create institutions, they just didn't have the institutional strength once he was assassinated to carry on. And there's a number of reasons for that, different personality conflicts and so forth of that nature. And so that is what led to it not being, perpetual. But I will say this, alhamdulillah, MIB is still a lineal organization from El-Hajj Malik, and you can see a direct line of teachings from El-Hajj Malik to Imam Talib and the brothers there in Harlem. Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. So we just wanted to show how, number one, like, and one last thing I'll mention about this Muhammad Speaks creation is that if someone was to ask me, where's the fruits of all of his building, whatever, I would just point to the Nation of Islam. That's his fruit. It's just he's the front man. He created stuff, organized stuff, but he wasn't the leader. And so
Right.
many of these things that he created, or if he didn't create it, he had a direct hand in organizing. Many
Yes.
of these things were taken from him and used against him.
Exactly. That is the irony of it all, really. Because when he joined the nation initially, they had, and he said this in an interview, that they had a total of approximately 400 members when he initially joined.
We mentioned
Right.
that earlier before you came on too. It was on the other slide.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And it was, I think, like maybe on the 11 temples, and everything above that up until his passing, he was either heavily involved in or participated in help, shoring them up,
Yeah. SubhanAllah. Like even the one in New York, right? They didn't have that property at first. It was a storefront. That big corner property they got now, Malcolm.
Yep.
And that's the story in so many different cities.
Yep. But it was interesting how they kind of, built you basically, like, it would start with like little study groups with brothers meeting, you know, going over the lessons and stuff like that. And then they would bring in, you know, like El Hajj bringing Malcolm to then, you know, attract more people, right? It starts with like a few brothers. They'd be like the initiators, and then he would come in and then build it right on up, inshallah.
Say that again, because when you came in, this is kind of like one of the points we were making. Because we talking about Malcolm the Builder. And so we were trying to get lessons from that, how we could and should be building. Ah, man.
Come on, man. We brought you in to run it down the line and you got disconnected.
You know, when these questions get too hot, he gonna bail.
They invite him for coffee.
These guys gonna get me in trouble.
They invite him for coffee. The Dixiecrats inviting him for coffee, man.
But he made a point that we kind of like made already.
Is there more on this or no?
It's a little bit more.
Oh, go ahead then.
No, I need to step away for a quick second. Give me a minute. I need to step away for a second.
So go ahead, Imam Faheem.
No, it's your turn, cuz.
I just think sometimes when we talk about history and we learning from this, we talk about it as just past events without realizing how are we living those past events in our present, and what should we learn from all the dynamics that existed in the past, and how we should benefit from those things. Because I honestly believe we have Malcolm X's alive today. We have many Al-Hajj Malik Shabazz potentially, but we don't have those institutions and that group support that facilitated his growth and development. And I think more than looking for the individual, we need to establish the base, the foundation that supports that individual. And I think seriously, this is extremely important, because we talk about what it was like in the heyday, but we don't want to do the work to bring the heyday to our day, right? And I think that's a lesson that we have to grab, right? Okay, that was nice. They did this, they did this. Now, what are we going to do similar to produce a similar result, or if not a better result, because we're looking back. And as they say, hindsight is 2020. You know, you're looking behind. So how is it reflecting in our now? You know, I think that's what do you think about that, Imam?
Yeah, we gotta get with the program, man. You know, another part that I wanted to mention, if I can, from the speech of the Ballad of the Bullet. He said, you don't have a revolution in which you love your enemy, and you don't have a revolution in which you are begging the system of exploitation to integrate you into it. Revolutions overturn systems, and revolutions destroy systems. You know, and even one of the great leaders of that time, Dr. Martin Luther King, you know, he said near the end of his, you know, he was saying that he felt like with integration that he led his people into a burning house, you know. And one of the things that we've lost is this togetherness and this cohesiveness as a people, using Islam as the means to keep us together. You know, now we know wa'tasimu bihablillahi jami'an wa la tafarraqu, you know, and that is based on our nationality and our tribe and our, you know, the things that unite us in this country, being subjugated and being oppressed and being poor and being marginalized, you know. And now this strength of La ilaha illallah should make this an even greater bond, because we recognize it in each other, and that, you know, that we should be ready, no sellout.
But Imam, I'm gonna give you something, and Imam, like 10 years ago, Imam Talib Abdul Rashid made this point. And it was very strong. And I was like, wow, that's deep. You know, now all of the mechanisms and the dialogue that leads to revolution are taboo in our vocabulary. So in Islam, you can't say jihad no more. Now every jihad is defensive. It's all watered down. And even, so that was in Islam. So there's no Islam, even in our Aqidah. As Imam al-Tahawi mentioned, Hajj and jihad will always remain, right? But to our, now, there's no such thing as jihad in Islam in practice, nor in theory. It's just something that's in the old yellow books of creed and law. But in practice, there's no thought of it, nor what is needed to facilitate that, which is Islamic government. So Sharia, jihad, all that's wiped out, right? Across the spectrum, right? And now jihad, Sharia, all become ingredients of terrorism. And that's how we all accept it, even the Muslims. It's just talk, right? Then the other aspect, for Black people, being a revolutionary has become synonymous with the term jihad in the Arabic language. So no one no longer says we're on a revolution. Matter of fact, we're into assimilation, no revolution, period. So even the one who's talking revolution is assimilated at the highest levels of assimilation. That point that he raised, I think, is very important. Right?
Revolutionary assimilationist.
Yes.
How does that even exist?
Because the first thing when you talk about really movement, someone's worrying about their job and their career. If you think about it, that's the canceling point of revolution. Man, I'm successful. And revolution means sacrifice. And that means that you may not be able to go to Mr. Charlie and kiss his hand and steep his job. Right?
Yo,
no, that's real.
This is deep. It's like, you know, we got a revolution. We got to put in work. Man, I hope it ain't tomorrow because I can go work tomorrow. like I remember I was up north and we had to move on somebody, right? And one brother was like, well, I got programs. Like, Negro, we doing it. We making a move doing child tomorrow, man. Ain't nobody going to programs doing child, man. Brother came with all kind of excuses. Well, I can't be there. Hey, you going to be there.
But you know something? And I think when we understand our deen properly, we know everything has a context, right? And we won't nullify aspects of our deen for fear of repercussions or death or imprisonment, because even the revolution, it will be by the book, right? Even every struggle will be within the context of the sacred law, because none of that is outside of the sacred law. But they destroyed the whole thing. Ignorance of the sacred law, therefore never will you do that which is in compliance with it. So I think that's a double-fold, a double-edged sword in a way. Like sword, and if you don't know the sacred law, you can't establish the other stuff. And when you establish the other stuff without the sacred law, it's going to be established wrong, and it'll be justifiable for the enemies of Islam to say what? It's a bad practice. So education should precede all of those actions anyway.
Yep.
Even in the nation, connecting it back to what we're talking about, right? Nation of Islam had lessons, right?
Yes.
So when they was meeting, they wasn't only talking about, oh, we need to raise money to get the temple, or we need to sell food, or we need to do this. They was going over them lessons. And it seems like when we're on some deviance and stuff, we don't have no problem with lessons. But as soon as we come to proper Islam, we don't want to do no lessons. And in all of our gatherings, it should be a bare minimum that's accepted, as far as the lessons. And we have that in all of the various schools of Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah, all of the four madhahibs, you know, as far as outward practice, we have lessons. In Maliki, one of the basic ones is called Al-Akhdari, which, you know, a lot of us, we got our lessons, but now we come to Ahlus Sunnah, we don't have that. And every school has that. And the same thing with regards to the creed. We have basic manuals on creed. And I think that's another tool, that's something else that we should not overlook, because, you know, in the nation, right, just like other groups, there's some bare minimum type of learning that you have to get in order for you to be considered a real member. Nobody's going to look at you like you serious about this thing unless you get that that bare minimum. Even the 5%ers got that. Supreme mathematics, supreme alphabet, right?
Right. Knowledge precedes action.
Exactly. Everybody got that. But when we come to proper Islam, no, most of us don't know the supreme mathematics or the supreme alphabet.
And that was infiltration into Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah in the name of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah by deviant groups. And they gave ideas that nullified the need for lessons, because everyone became a mujtahid in his own right, even if they don't know anything, right? So there is no need to study, you know, lessons and books and curriculum, because I make my own curriculum. As it could be said, I got my own version of Islam, and I have the right to live it the way I want.
Yeah, I mean, like, for example, you know, you have people just taking an English translation of an ayah and then use that as an implementation of Islam. You know, that is, you know, one of the fallacies that's come across of the Mahabia group, and doing that, and you're
what's the name of that group? Mahabia. I don't know what you're talking about. Could you make it plain what you're saying?
The Wahhabis.
All right, good. Let's give that man a round of applause.
What do they call themselves now?
But you know what I'm saying, though. But so, right?
No, I know what you're saying. I needed you to say it. No, go ahead. I'm just messing.
No, but what it's creating this idea of that, you know, anyone, you can just skip, you know, 1400, 1200 years of Islamic jurisprudence and then just create rulings on their own. You know what I'm saying? It's a madhouse.
I want you to reiterate something, because you were spitting some hot fire and it burnt up your Wi-Fi connection and you got cut off, right? Mm-hmm. I was about to ask you to repeat where you said how they would like formulate temples. You know, there was a method to it.
Right. So it was started off like study groups, right? So you may have a brother in a particular area. He may not even have a whole lot of people. He may have a couple people, right? So they would go into the area. This brother would then bring in, you know, Malcolm or another speaker, right? And then they would draw even more people, right? And now you got enough to create a temple, right? They start off meeting, and then they progress and get an actual spot for a temple, right? And that was the framework. They built up like that. So, and that is taken a little bit from the Garveyite policy, right? So the Garveyite, if you had 7 people, you had enough for a temple. Now, I mean, for their meeting halls, rather, right? So you had all of these halls across the country where it was Garveyites, but all they needed to initially have would be like 7 members, 7 people, and then you got yourself a unit, so to speak.
You know, when I came home, I became part of Imam Siraj Wahaj's community, Masjid Taqwa. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how many times I heard the story of how they started. This is what you just described was the template of how to build a community, any community in Black mm-hmm. America. Mm-hmm. When he left his former community in 1981, they used to meet in a brother's house. Mm-hmm. Masjid Taqwa didn't start where Masjid Taqwa is at now. It started in someone's house. Mm-hmm. I think the month was July. It started. by November, they had enough to purchase Masjid, where Masjid Taqwa is at now. And I think they paid like $20,000 for that. So a small handful of people started their own group. They was meeting in someone's house, having Jumu'ah in someone's house. And less than a year later, they pooled their resources and organized to such a degree that they were able to purchase their own property.
But you have to be committed to do that, right? You can't be half in, half out. You know, those small core group of people have to be totally committed to the agenda, right?
Exactly.
If they're half in, half out, and they're waffling, you're not going to get nothing created.
I'll give you a beautiful story. My mother-in-law, rahimahullah, that told me about Baytul Quraysh, right? Let us recite Al-Fatiha for her soul, inshallah. Al-Fatiha. So Sheikh Camille Wadud, rahimahullah, they was in our house in Newark, New Jersey. And it was him, his wife, and a few people. They all lived in the house, right? The community was in that one house. You know, it was like 3 levels, and they had, you know, the family with his wife and kids, then some other families in different rooms, right? And what used to that where they had as a community, and many families was actually our house, where it was just me, my wife, and her and her sister, right? At one point. And I used to go through the house. It seemed so small for just us, even though it's a huge house. They had a whole community in there. They was on a whole, when you're talking about sacrifice, it was this family in the basement, this family in that room, this family in that room, this one, like that's how they was living. And they would come together and they said, listen, we don't have a lot of money. Everybody give whatever they got, $1, $2, $3. And he would take that money and go over to New York. And he was a good like businessman and negotiator and get clothing for the money and say, this is what we got. Give us whatever you can give us. We promise to bring the money back. And you know, those people over there in the garment district, they wanted to get rid of clothes. So he would go, those brothers would take those clothes and go in Newark, New Jersey, and they would sell those clothes. They would bring that money back to the community and they would give us. They ended up getting to around 14 vans and trucks going around Newark selling clothes from just a little bit. They end up building their own halal market, their own dorms, their own school, and all of those. And that's how it was in Baytul Quraysh in just Newark, New Jersey, a Black community that they came together and they started just like that in one house with a bunch of families. And a lot of the elders who are from that area remember that, you know. And I see some of the elders be like, man, I was in Baytul Quraysh. And when I look, because I actually lived in their mosque as a house, that where they started, I lived there. So, wow, that was some amazing work. And I used to talk to my mother-in-law about this, like, but they was on it. But that was the culture of that time. Blacks
one of the things I also liked about the program of the Baytul Quraysh was that they had different families, right? So that when a person came to Islam, they would be part of another family. So you have the Ibrahims or different families, and the person would become a part of that family, like the broader, larger family, and get support in being a Muslim, right? That's another thing that is sorely lacking, right? We give shahadas, and the person may get a Quran or a prayer rug, maybe, not all the time, and then they're on their own. It's no orientation, right? To keep them torqued into the community. Whereas those other movements, when somebody came in, it was almost like the AA. Somebody was responsible for that person, you know what I'm saying? And getting that person properly oriented into how the organization functions. We don't do that because you know, we just Muslim. Hey, you take shahada, you can go anywhere for salat. You know what I'm saying? As opposed to getting the individuals and orientating them to a proper way, you know?
But you know, the thing about it is, right? The other thing, now that was in Newark, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they were connected with Izzadeen Village.
Mm-hmm.
They were connected with Sheikh Dawood in State Street. They was connected with the brothers from the Dar in Philly. They was connected with Imam Matawuf in
Mm-hmm.
Cleveland. All of them, they worked together. And to
Mhm.
show you how much they worked together, they ultimately had a group that actually went to Saudi Arabia as a delegation of black imams,
Yes.
which all of them was together on that delegation, and they actually had a seat on Rabita.
Yep.
So they went from all these little small communities all over the, especially on the East Coast, and they all worked together, supported each other's resources, so they built a network for themselves.
But that's
In
the
the
key
early
thing.
70s.
But that's the key thing, what you said, Imam, right there, for themselves. You know, no matter how you articulate it, you know, the nation would say do for self, or you building for yourself, or whatever. That notion of being independent and self-governing and self-led is absolutely critical to establishing anything that's going to, you know, have any longevity. You got to be able to do for yourself. You have to create your own and support your own.
And if you remember, I got to add this, got to have some fun here.
Yes.
The Ansars started like that.
Yes.
They would have one spot, right, in Brooklyn, one little house. They used to go around in the early days, in the early 70s. They used to write like a law on a piece of paper, or they would write some little stuff, and they would take those papers and go out in the community, talk to people about their stuff, get little donations, come together. They lived together. They supported one another. So they built in Brooklyn square blocks of brownstones. And that came from that concept was with all black movements.
You want to know something funny? I actually used to have a poster of that masjid that was looking like they had the minarets like the Sudan.
Yes.
And that they had in Brooklyn.
Yes.
I used to have a poster of that masjid.
That's right. I know you're keeping it clean. I know you was a fan, right?
There they go.
Hey, I was. Hey, listen. Let's be clear. You know, one of the things that the Ansars did, you know, and I would really love to see us as, when I say us, I mean the Sunni Muslims, right?
Well, who are the Sunni Muslims? We got to define that first quickly.
to take pride.
No pass go. Stop at the toll, bro. You got to pay the toll. Let's keep this clean. You got to pay the toll, bro.
So what you want, Imam?
You said the Sunni Muslims. That's a
Right.
vague term in our time. Who are the Sunni Muslims? And then we go on. Pay the toll. You can't skip the toll.
Okay. The followers of the four madhabs, right?
And that's in fiqh. What else?
Oh my God.
This is the black man. You can't just go past the toll. This ain't no easy pass. Gotta pay.
Matridi and Ashri and Creed.
And last, one more. In the science of spirituality, the people of
Tasawwuf.
All right, go ahead. Now you got a toll. Go ahead, pay. We don't got to send you no ticket.
All right. No, but seriously, it's to take pride in teaching the children Quran, right? This was something that was a major selling point, right? Something that I was a fan of the Ansars was the fact that they had all of these black children reciting Quran that they would distribute, you know, the videos and stuff. Man, that was amazing, right? And even now in 2023, we still have very little of that, right? That is something that should be major. This should be an objective of every masjid, to have a class where we're teaching the children Quran, right? Fluently. That is something that I think if we instituted that, that would be something that would be beautiful to our communities across the country, you know?
But you know what they did? And they got that from the nation, from the Garvey movement, from all of our Black movements.
Mm-hmm.
They have their own schools and their own institutions.
Have to have your own.
Right? So the whole education in the Ansar community was surrounded around their stuff. That's if the kids didn't speak English, they spoke Arabic. That was because they had that culture there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it was no way you could be in the Ansars, as Imam Naim said, or any Black movement for that matter, and not know your lessons. It just wasn't happening.
You gotta know your lessons.
You gotta know your lessons. And that was, especially as a child, a part of your lessons, right? So when you look, what we do today, I got all that stuff when I was in the Ansars, right? That's how I learned Arabic. That's how I learned about Quran and Sunnah, those words. I learned that in the Ansars. And it equipped me when I became a Sunni, because I was already well-grounded. I was already disciplined into study. I was already disciplined into memorizing from the Ansars, right? So a lot of times, those things we just did as Black folks, we left off following someone else. We already had certain mechanisms in our Black struggle that we need to revive.
Yes, I agree.
There they go. Every
it.
time we talk about Black movements, somebody pull an answer out there.
No, honestly, to me, though, when I look at movements and I look historically, this is just me, and I may be a little biased in that. I think the Ansars, if it would have had the correct knowledge of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah, would have been the best movement we saw yet. If, that's an if, it didn't have that. So you had a leader who was corrupt and all that. But the structure, if we could do that with Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah, forget about it. Because they wasn't intimidated by nobody, not Arabs. That never happened in the Ansars. Even till they locked Dr. York up, they never, ever, ever lost their Blackness. Never. That's something to think about. Even when they was going crazy, they was always proud to be Black and build their own. They never left that. To the point that they went all the way to Georgia and started challenging white folks. That's what got them in trouble, right? We're going to make our own city. We're going to do. So that part of it, with all the deviants, they never left building for themselves as Black people. They never left that. Would you agree? I mean, you were down Georgia. Would you agree, Akil?
Well, they was pretty much, they was off the land by the time I moved. I didn't move to Georgia until like 2014. That's when I moved to Georgia. So that was after all of that. They were outside of, I was in Atlanta. They was outside of Atlanta.
And here's the point. And when I say that, because I'm just saying the mechanism was there, that means we can do it.
No doubt.
Because if you look at what's like all of our former Wahhabis who like to criticize the Ansars, who are no different from them. The Ansars are the physical version and the Wahhabis are the spiritual version of the Ansars. It's no different, right? Now I said it, right? So they worship blasphemous stuff in the earth and they worship blasphemous stuff in the sky. What's the difference, right? But now they've been popularized. Same difference. You and Ansars are equal. Wahhabi Ansar, no different. Nation, Ansar, Wahhabi, all the same. Different form of the same thing. All right, that's me. Akil, you ain't gonna get in trouble for that. That's me. Right? They expect that from me, right? But no, here's my point. Take the Wahhabi movement. Show me one black Wahhabi movement that has done 10% of what the Ansar's done for black people and for their own black people I'm talking about. Give me one. Anywhere close to that. Hasn't happened.
Well,
So
your brother in East Orange.
that's one building, and they didn't even last strong and build too much. One building.
Yeah.
Ansars had business, had buildings, had stuff. They didn't have nowhere near close to that. Not even a fraction of that.
Welcome to the offices of Deviant, and Deviant.
No, we just got, see, sometimes we won't be fair and we won't benefit from where we could benefit.
Yeah.
Because they make us think black people can't do anything. And that is a sign that black people can do stuff.
Right. And we have to, but we have to focus.
Deviant doctrine. We agree it was deviant. We wouldn't be Sunni. We wouldn't be Ahl Sunnah.
Right.
But when you talk about what we can do as a people, don't tell me what we can't do. I seen it. I lived it. Right? I actually lived it. I know what we could do.
But you have to be.
The doctrines that we have are preventative measures so that we never do it.
Exactly. Right.
The doctrines we carry are preventative measures so that we never do it.
Yeah. Right.
Imam, I mean, triggering people.
You said what?
Bring them out.
What you said, Imam?
He out here triggering people.
No,
I think some people done forgot what we even talk about tonight.
No, but the seriousness of it. No. So I'm gonna tie it back into what you were saying, Imam, when I came in the first time, right? Of Al-Haj Malik being a builder, right? And one of the things that's essential to building is unambiguous leadership and a stated mission, right? It has to be unambiguous, right? But if you have we just Muslim and the Masjid is just to worship Allah with no program, no mission, you're not going to build. It doesn't come out of that. You get people to work, to buy into the program, and then they build based upon that, right? But if you have this notion of bay'ah is not permitted in this time, you don't have bay'ah to organizations no more. You eliminate any type of allegiance to a leader, so you don't have a leader that's followed. You don't have a community that has a mission, right? So it's just like you said, it's planned non-growth, because you can't build if you don't see yourself as a people and needing to preserve what you have and build upon you. It just doesn't happen.
But the doctrine, you got to remember, the indoctrination, which was the same in the nation, which was the same in the More Science Temple, which was the same in the Ansars, which was the same in the 5%ers, which is the same in the Wahhabi movement. It all has you think in a certain way. If you're indoctrinated in a certain way, you're not going to move beyond that. So if you're indoctrinated that your religion is based by the direction of Saudi Arabia, how are you ever going to build for black people? And even if you move to other groups, if you think you're like when the Tabligh Jamaat was big in the black community, it was all developing a Pakistani version of Islam that doesn't reflect black people. That's why I didn't survive. The same thing with other groups. They come, they have their roots in another country. They try to bring it to our cities. We don't accept it. It doesn't last. It's not sustainable, right? So we do need a black expression of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah, and that's not wrong. Every people have their expression of Islam as a culture. The rules are the same, but the expression and the way it is in the context is different. We need a black expression of Islam. I don't know why people find that so hard to believe. And there's nothing wrong with it. In the Prophet ﷺ's time, they were all Sahaba. Didn't he let the Habashis do their thing?
Absolutely.
They were having a different, they weren't Arabs, they were Habashi, they were Ethiopians, they had their own culture. And they did their culture. Why we can't do ours? We've been told that if we be black, that's not Islam.
He even organized most of the armies based upon tribe.
Mm-hmm.
The
Yes.
Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
And the first thing, when people would come to him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and say they come to Medina, he said, learn, go back and teach your people.
Mm-hmm.
They tell us, learn and go back and bring your people to me. And he would respect the leadership among the people. He would respect the leaders from those people.
And if the leader themselves didn't become Muslim, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam would appoint a leader among them from their own people that was Muslim. Like if a whole tribe did become Muslim,
mm-hmm.
and meaning the leader of the tribe didn't become Muslim, but a group of Muslims from a tribe became Muslim. Of those Muslims, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam will appoint a leader from those that became Muslim. That's the part of the sirah they don't want you to know though.
No, but that's part of the struggle, right? Is trying to get over all those years of indoctrination that this is Asabia, right? This is nationalism. This is making Asabia and nationalism the same thing, right? When the Prophet ﷺ clearly defined what Asabia is, right? Clearly defined it. So that it's not even an argument, really. But again, that's the point, right? We're moving towards the building. And I personally think Al-Hajj Malik, rahimahullah, had an excellent program of what he articulated in this context in America that would be suitable for our people.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, we're going to take a pause. We're over time, and Imam Faheem didn't reach his goal.
See, that's the problem now. When it come down to the wire, we isolate and segregate from each other. Now it's Imam Amin is my goal. I thought it was together, man. We all we got.
But you good at this, brother. Everybody got a talent.
Man.
You good at that. Camden don't run your pockets. You good at that stuff. Because this is our real problem. We talk, but we don't do the work. And in the Ansars, you would never get away with that. You think Malcolm was strict? You miss your quota and see what happens.
BRT, we all we got.
You know how you were talking about, Imam? Malcolm hold those rules. Imam Isa hold those rules. You don't hold those rules. You don't get that $100, there's going to be dire consequences.
Did you say dire?
You're going to look like the Elephant Man on Friday after Juma.
He said dire consequences.
But honestly, this is a part of it. Now, here's where we lose the group. We're talking about all this, but that's historically. We saw that they did all that. Now, when we going to do the same thing? It's
always when the rubber meets the road. Because subconsciously, we looking for someone else to do it. And that's why I asked Akil to reiterate what we done mentioned even before he came on. But I think he said it more succinctly and clearly of how to build. And there's still people talking about how we going to get it like it was back then. We just told you. But it requires work. But we waiting for somebody else to fly in on their magic carpet, as we used to say back in the day. They glow in the dark turban and a magic thobe, right? And do it for us. It don't work like that. We just showed you how it worked. All of us on the ground in our localities have to put in that work.
Yeah. Yes. And I'm telling you, Malcolm X did not do what he did without money. It didn't happen.
Did not happen.
And they weren't walking around talking about, Malcolm, why are you begging? Because part of that was you go out there and sell those papers, you go out there and sell that fish, you get that money. We act like that wasn't a part of it. That was a part of it. Them brothers was out there and doing some other stuff to get that money, which we don't suggest. But that was a part of it.
But also was a part of it.
Don't forget
it wasn't
that.
not necessarily just that you had to sell the papers. Whether you sold the papers or not, once you got your quota of papers, you had to turn in the money. I mean, that's just the fact. You had to turn in that money.
There's endless stories.
We went from not doing the work and let's get a grant. We don't do all that work. We can just get a grant. We don't want no grant. We want us to work.
So on that
There's
note,
endless stories about people in the nation having closets full of Muhammad speaks, but still giving in that money.
Yeah,
Maybe they didn't have the selling skills and all of that, but guess what? They turned in that money, even though they couldn't get rid of them papers.
Right.
So on that note, turn in that money and drop that bread.
I want to look at this another way. Do you think in the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was allowed to sit around and do nothing and no one censored you?
Say it again.
I said, because some people think, well, there's no, you just do what you want. I said, in the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, according to his seerah, were you allowed to sit around in Medina and do nothing, or in Mecca and just do nothing and no one said nothing to you?
No, you got ostracized. Ka'b ibn Malik. He didn't participate in the Battle of Tabuk. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, how many days was it? 60? What they wasn't speaking to him? 90 days. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam even sent a message to him, separate yourself from your wife. His wife moved out. What did he do? He didn't work against, undermine the community. No, he just stayed home and didn't do nothing.
No, but here's what I'm saying. But the reality is we celebrate things, but we're not real. We're not saying how it actually occurred. We're romanticizing a reality that was a reality.
It was hard work.
Imagine Muhammad would come in and said, I need a jet. Them jokers went and got that bread.
Yeah.
The messenger needs transportation, brother. Brother Malcolm got to move. We got to spread the dot with brother. Go get that. And jokers from Philly and Newark, and maybe New York too, definitely Philly and Newark, they know the brother's coming to get that bread. Count on it.
Yeah.
No, seriously.
No, I know.
So we'll just talk about that part of it and don't realize there was real work being done on the ground. It wasn't just Malcolm with his nice, personality and good speech. It was people putting in work on all levels. I mean, and that part we forget.
And that's the only way you're going to get back to it is doing for yourself. You know what I'm saying? And like you said, you can't wait on a few grant writers to build your community. You have to get boots on the ground. That's just the way it's going to be.
And I think a lot of times we have our imams and leaders in our community working just as hard as in that effort, but ignored because it's not a habit to make others work. Just the leader got to do all the work, right? And Imam Talib said something at one of the like a couple black Imam roundtable. I mean, a black African American summit a couple years ago. He said something. Stop bringing the Imam stuff that he can do. Why don't you bring him something you can do? You ever remember that Imam Talib said that at the African American Islamic Summit? Don't bring me no ideas I can do. Bring me something you doing, right?
It reminds me. I always mention him, but there's this book I have over there, something like Islam in America After Malcolm X by Stephen Barboza, and he talks. This book is interviews with a whole bunch of people, right? One of the people whose name I can't remember, he was going to law school, and he came to Elijah Muhammad and said, he wanted to put in some work for his people. So he in his mind, he wanted to do criminal law since so many black people involved with the criminal justice system. Elijah Muhammad said, nah, you got to do international commercial law. And he ended up being the lawyer, the one that really organized and quarterbacked the fish they was getting from Peru. Somebody mentioned the fish that the Nation of Islam used to sell. This brother did that. So you see how in a nation and other groups that put a machine together to get what they wanted to get done, you see that everybody wasn't trying to be the minister. Everybody wasn't trying to be the captain. People put in where their skill set was.
Right. You
This
got different
person was
skill sets. Yep.
This person was a lawyer. He contributed his knowledge and practice of law to the nation.
And wait a minute, and think about it. We got to think about it, because in our thing, we don't want to support, because we're so worried about the leader living luxurious, right? Or living off the money. Let me ask you, where was Malcolm X working at? Where was his job?
For the NOI, for free.
Right? Who bought his house?
NOI.
Who bought his car?
NOI.
Who bought all the clothes on his back?
NOI.
Who put the food on his table?
NOI.
And what was he dedicated to doing?
Spreading the NOI.
So I don't understand. And he was great for that. And we praise him. And when he lost all that, it was a struggle. I don't understand. Like, we're talking about it, but let's talk about it. These are real things. He was free to do all that. If he had to go to Mr. Charlie's and punch in the clock, that wouldn't have got done.
But typically we don't pay African American imams. I mean,
talk
and
about
we're the
it.
only ones who don't do that. Every other culture do it.
Talk about it.
I mean, I don't understand that, because the preachers get money and everything, but from my experience, we typically don't pay the imams. The imams don't live off, typically. I'm just saying typically, my experience. Typically, they don't live off the monies from the Masjid.
What money? What monies? They don't give. How are you going to live off that?
That's what I'm saying. They live off of their own
work. We say the imams don't live, not because they wouldn't like to. It ain't there to live off.
They can't live off of it, even the money they get.
Tell it like it is.
They got to put money. Mm-hmm. We got to be fair. The imam is putting money. He's not.
Mm-hmm.
In the black community, the imam put the money.
And for the record, for everybody that don't know, I'm not an imam.
But you got inside understanding. You know how this thing go.
Yeah.
But no, I'm saying these are all, because these were all recipes that led to Al-Hajj Malik Shabazz success.
Yes.
And if you act like they didn't exist and then try to duplicate it, it won't happen, because you're missing elements. Right? I think so. When we have a discussion, we can't romanticize the reality of it.
Yes.
There were necessary tools in that toolbox that made him, and you can't ignore it. And since we don't have those necessary tools, that's why we're not seeing those same results.
But I do want to say, so it doesn't get lost in the shuffle, you absolutely have to have an Amir, a leader. You have to have a Jamaat, and the Jamaat has to have a stated allegiance. It can't be, ephemeral. It can't be off in the sky. You know what I'm saying? It has to be something concrete that you can also hold people accountable to. That's a must in order to build for us here in America.
Can you repeat that 2 more times? Because that's essential. And we don't like that either, just like we don't like giving money. We hate that more than giving money, what you just said.
Yeah.
As people, we
you might have triggered some people
more than we like giving money. We dislike giving money, but we dislike what you talk about more. So say that 2 more times.
No, seriously, no, we have to have unambiguous leadership, right? With a stated objective, with allegiance. Like, it can't just be, pie in the sky. Hey, we just Muslim and we gonna come pray. No, we got an agenda. You got this job. You got this job. This is what you have to do, right? This is the organization. This is what we're doing. You got to have stated objectives, or else you're not going to get much accomplished. Not in our reality with our people, and it's got to be about our people too. Let's be clear, not just Muslim, but about Black people in America. What our problems, the things we're facing as a people, irrespective of, being a Muslim or not, we have to have that objective to bring or attempt to remediate some of these problems.
See, another thing I know about our people is what you said was very clear, succinct, and unambiguous. I guarantee you there's some folks out there that still don't know what you're talking about, right? So give an example of that. Like, because people like what you mean, like, leader, like elite, what you mean? Give an example of that, for example.
An imam, or you could say amir, or whatever, right? The Prophet ﷺ said that not even 3 of you should even travel without appointing somebody as the amir, as the person that is the leader, right?
See, that's clear.
How are you
That's
going to
clear.
have a whole community without a leader?
But see, that's clear. But for folks that don't want to hear it, that's still not clear. This is what I'm asking. Like, for example, are you really trying to tell me, for example, that Imam Faheem should have some folks around him in his city, in his masjid, that say Imam Faheem is my leader and I have to do what he says?
Umar ibn Khattab, radiallahu anhu, said that there is no Islam without Jama'ah, without an organization, without community. There's no Jama'ah. There's no Islam without Jama'ah, and there's no Jama'ah without hearing and obeying. Or if you want to get, a more fanciful word, cooperation. A leader can't do anything unless he has people that's willing to cooperate when he's given an order.
Which Sayyidina Ali said, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman had men like me. I have men like you. Big difference.
Yeah.
Big difference. So you're only going to be as successful as the commitment of the people to that success.
Hold on. I want to answer Sister Malika. Yeah, he's our leader, but we're also leaders in our city. So the leaders in our city don't skip over, for example, the people under me in Pittsburgh don't skip over me and go to Imam Amin, right?
Like
the leaders, the people under Imam Faheem don't skip over Imam Faheem and go to Imam Amin. No, there's a hierarchy, there's a rank there.
But that's
like
very
the private,
like
the private don't skip over the sergeant, lieutenant, and all that stuff and go to the general.
But that's very important what you just said, Imam, about structure, right? The structure. When the Sahaba went to different areas, and the Prophet ﷺ appointed amirs in those areas, right? The people in those areas were responsible to them.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? They're responsible to them.
Yeah.
But you know, here's the catch. That we have, and that's why I'm emphasizing Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah, and why I keep saying that, because right now the biggest struggle in the Black community to do what we're going to do is the Wahhabi infiltration within our masajid and our communities, because their loyalty is outside of us, because their whole religious concept is a Saudi innovated understanding of Islam with loyalty outside of us. So it will never work.
Well, but part of that is not just the loyalty outside of us, Imam. Because if they were to just honestly look at the Saudi structure, just honestly look at it, right? All of those scholars in Saudi, they take bay'ah to their emir, the king, every time a new one is appointed. They do this. This is open. This is not something that I'm just saying that like is, you know what I'm saying, This is known. It's open. They take bay'ah to him.
And
So-
guess what? They all have the same doctrine. They're all Wahhabi.
You're right.
So at the end of the day, and their shuyukh are all Ali Sheikh or Ali Saud.
But that's what I'm saying. So they
At
conceded.
the end of the day, their allegiance go to a specific leader, namely Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab. So when that boils down, and the Saudi family, that's their structure. When that comes down to us, we just abid. And we are taking a doctrine that is not the overall Islamic doctrine. It's the doctrine of a group of people whose whole thing is to bring it all back to them. So we're always going to be left out.
But it was
the point.
Part of what their program was, though, right? In the 80s was to put out information to discredit Bay'ah and Jamaat in the African American community. Like they had a stated program of doing that, right? So we have to combat that, right? With giving the people knowledge that, hey, no, this is from the Sunnah of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, right? Because many of our people are so confused, and then it feeds upon their own insecurities and self-hate, right? If you already don't like being black, right, and you got problems with being black, then somebody say, well, hey, you just be Muslim and you ain't really got to be black. You just Muslim, right? That feeds into that already problematic thinking that you already have. That's why it's so successful, because if you didn't already have that internally, it wouldn't be so successful. You can't take an average person and tell them, hey, don't follow nobody from amongst yourselves. You only follow us. No rational person would take that. Only a person who has internal insecurities or self-hate will allow that to permeate and then not be something he manifests.
Yeah, but if your whole doctrine teaches you that,
yeah,
and your whole doctrine teach you everyone else were kuffar, mushrikun, grave worshippers, until our great forefather came and guided the whole world, and now we bless you with pure tawheed, and everyone else is on shirk and bid'ah, then you wouldn't believe that this is your Khalifa. So I do have allegiance. I do to Saudi Arabia. No, it's serious stuff.
Yeah.
And guess what? They did such good propaganda with that, where we accept it without even challenging it. That's why you notice none of our black people come back shake. They all students of knowledge. No matter how long they've been over there.
Perpetual.
You don't think that has something to do with we're in charge? When their students that grew up in there, they become judges, imams, real imams, not translators, real leaders, real sheikhs, everything, positions in the university, positions in the government, judges. But anyone else, you are a servant, no matter how many years you study. So that's something we have to wake up and realize. And it dismisses all other Islamic scholarship in the history of Islam and reinterprets it to fit inside that doctrine. So if we keep giving us our people that same doctrine, we're going to face the same problem. It's going to be worse because we're going to be deluded in thinking we're free when we're still slaves.
Because it's embedded in the indoctrination. I get you.
I mean, it's real stuff. All right, we can close out. We put you in the hot seat enough, just fry you up a little bit, put some pepper and salt on you.
I see.
Hey, I think I killed Fahad. He touched on part of what, because I didn't finish the slides, but we going too long. He mentioned some of what I was going to mention, because Malcolm, rahimahullah, he, even after getting kicked out of the nation, he did try to reorganize. He established the OAAU, the Organization of African American Unity, and Muslim Mosque Incorporated. But the last year of his life, he spent half of that year in Africa and making Hajj and moving around. And he was actually martyred when he was about to release what we talking about, the program of the organization, the bullet points, the program, the mission statement, all of that. He verbally articulated it many times, but he was coming with an actual program when he got assassinated.
That's the killing part about it, right? Because it was that day where he was going to announce everything. That's crazy.
Yep. And I also have a slide there talking about his sister Ella Collins, because I don't think that anybody who claims to seriously have any knowledge about Malcolm, I don't think that if you talk about him and you don't mention his sister Ella Collins, you don't really know his history. She played a critical part in his entire life.
Especially when it came to giving him some bread.
Yep.
Especially when it came to giving him some bread.
Paid for his Hajj.
The nation, she was a big funder.
And she became a Sunni Muslim before him. And she kind of like left. I forget if she got kicked out or she left the Boston Temple, because by that time Farrakhan was the minister and she was bumping heads with him. Right. And so I forgot if she got put out or she left. But she was the one who took Malcolm in when his family got broke up and they put his mom's in the crazy house. Right. You know, when they tried to separate the family, she took Malcolm in. So she was like there the whole time. And talking to him, because again, Imam Amin talked about romanticizing Malcolm. So many people think that Malcolm became Muslim when he went to Hajj, and that's where his Islam began. Nah, his Islamic dawah, to him started way before that. Even with Ella. Ella was the one connecting him with the Muslims and everything, and facilitating his Hajj even. So she's a very extremely important person. And again, that's just a glimpse of how Black folks get things done in this country. Yeah, the man, the Imam, or the minister, or whatever the organization may be out front, but you see there's key pivotal women in the background making stuff happen. And again, that's part of the danger of taking this Saudi religion, right, that they call Salafiyya, or we call what it really is Wahhabism, because they have embedded in their culture and their religion the crushing of the female spirit, and she can't do nothing. She can't even go to the grave, right? When it's time, like we experienced. Nah, you can't even come to the grave. You can't say nothing. You just shut up and stay in the back. That's not our culture.
Hey, I can't be like, see, I love y'all brothers, but we can't have no discussion and it don't revert to the crisis of the Wahhabis in the Black community.
If anybody listens to any of our classes and don't know what a Wahhabi is, I don't care what the subject is, right? We could be talking about, I don't know, anything, wallpaper. The word Wahhabi gonna come out. People don't even use wallpaper no more, but we gonna talk about it's gonna be Wahhabis. We gonna mention Wahhabis.
But no, because if we talk religiously, they tried to put that on Al-Hajj Malik Shabazz. But they don't even talk about that part. They leave his whole religious conviction off the table. No one talks about it, right? Yeah. And alhamdulillah, maybe by the wisdom of Allah, it was a good thing that he didn't get totally indoctrinated and he was still in the Black struggle. That might have been a protection for him religiously. We don't ever talk about that, because people forget the point that when he became Sunni or Orthodox, he never left the Black struggle.
Never.
And the new narrative is he became Sunni or Orthodox Muslim. He forgot all of that. No.
Never happened.
It's a lie.
Still, his prevalent mission was Black folk.
I heard he used to argue with Sheikh Hassoun about that, because all of the people that was around him, because Sheikh Hassoun, all these, they belong to Wahhabi organization.
Wait. Say that again.
Which part?
That he used to argue
With
him
Sheikh Hassoun
about what?
leaving off the black struggle.
Now,
Because
guess
he wanted
what?
them to just be
Is
about
that
dogma,
the same
doctrine.
thing he was given to him by the Saudis? Wahhabi from Sudan. And listen, you just identified that was a discussion they used to have. Oh, I'm black. But didn't they, now take that out. Look at all the blacks who go overseas to Saudi Arabia. Isn't that the same doctrine they came back with that they were trying to tell Malcolm back in the same day?
Yep.
History repeating itself. You mentioned it, that Malcolm used to reject that idea, so they were pushing it through a black man from Sudan who was Wahhabi. Now think of all those black graduates from Medina, those who study, didn't they come back with the same idea? So the Wahhabi idea never changed. Malcolm rejected it, and Allah called him back before we didn't get to see the outcome of that. But we see the outcome of it with our people, and think about it. There's one who is on black time, and he was the first one to get crucified. That was Abdullah.
Yeah.
He was, even though he had that doctrine, he was doing that. Now I'm black, and they crucified him, and he'd been off the minhaj before everybody. He was the first one to get assassinated.
He been off the minhaj before most of them got on the minhaj.
That's what I said. He got thrown off, made him do a bayan and all that other stuff. And solely thing, because he was on the sunnah, and you ask him, I'm on the sunnah, but you start talking that black stuff, nah, we don't do that.
He formed the Jamaat. Y'all remember that?
Yeah.
A Wahhabi Jamaat. Well, Muhammad Sayyid Ali was the Amir, right? And he was his naib, right?
But that's when the fitna came, and they was like, no, there's not gonna be no Amir of America.
No, and I'm saying that's something. So what I'm saying, it has facts to it. And if you think about these young guys, these last groups, of graduates who are the popular people now, because what we do as Negroes, we like to replace each other. And that whole movement was people going overseas. When I come back, I'm gonna be the man. So they go overseas, they sit with different Saudi sheikhs, they get tezkiah and blah, 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 blah. And now I'm the man. And then this last group, if you remember a couple years ago, they all started rebelling. All these young guys started rebelling against Saudi sheikhs telling them what to do. Y'all remember all those comments. And they started, bucking. And that's when the Madkhali group among the Wahhabiyya, which is the severe thing, that's where you get all this breaking up stuff. So they divided the black community and split them all up with that nonsense. And now in our community, that has become the idea of a Sunni Muslim. So we must fight it. If you understand my point, not just from a theological side, from a cultural and development side, for us as a people, that's dangerous.
Very much so.
And it showed it within its own group. Had blacks fighting each other, and they all on the same minhaj. Obviously, that ain't working for us.
Yeah, because you don't find too many of us in those in kafaya on black time.
And if you hear everyone who attacks the Black Imams Roundtable, they're all Wahhabis. You will find in the Wahhabi term, it's bid'ah, it's not sunnah, this, that, it's not bid'ah, it's not sunnah, you don't know the definition of bid'ah or sunnah, but that's what's being promoted. But the problem with most of us, we are afraid and intimidated by the Wahhabiyya because it became the standard. We know it, even the ones who know it's wrong and know how detrimental it has been to us culturally, religiously, economically, socially. We've been ripped apart by that, but none of us will say nothing. We know it. We know it for a fact. We can articulate it. We can document it. We see it historically. We see how it messed up our movements. We see all that stuff, but we won't say a word. And then The other thing is many of us who became Sunni because of that indoctrination of black inferiority, we go other places, and even as a Sunni, we become slaves of other people. We never seek our independence. And no nation on the face of the earth who has become Muslim, has converted, has done that except the African American. Except the African American. The Africans don't do that. The Chinese don't do that. Pakistanis, the Bengalis, no one else, the Indonesians, the Malaysians, no one does that except black people. African Americans, when I say black people. And we got to change that narrative. No one does that. Every nation of people declare their right of independence within Islam except us. That's something to think about. It's a serious thing. Now, are we going to be courageous enough and bold enough like the one we celebrated? Because Malcolm, Rahimahullah, Al-Hajj Malik Shabazz, who, by the way, even when they asked him about his beard and his name and the difference between the two, he said, I'm Al-Hajj Malik Shabazz and I'm always be Malcolm X. Do you remember him saying that?
He said, as long as the 22 million Americans, African Americans are, being oppressed, it's always going to be a Malcolm X.
There you go. So where's our Malcolm X now? We still oppressed, and I would like to say worse. We're in a worse condition. Because we believe it's a difference being oppressed and know you're oppressed, but to be oppressed and deluded that you're not oppressed is more dangerous.
Very much
I
so.
think that's where we at. We're still oppressed, but we're deluded by the tokens they've given us to think we're no longer oppressed. So I think we're in a worse condition.
I am Malcolm X.
I am Malcolm X.
I am
Malcolm X.
All right, we're gonna give you the closing words, Akil, because we know we're probably not gonna see you for the next 20 years.
No. I'm here. As a matter of fact, mashallah, I was at a program here in Detroit just prior to even coming on. Yeah, I'm here, man. I'm here.
No, we love you, we appreciate you. And I think you have a valuable contribution to all this work, right? And I think you know things. Are you coming to the summit?
Inshallah, yes.
Please, we wanna have you do some presentations too, but we gotta know you coming. Want to make room. You could be on the Black Lounge table with us.
Okay.
Right? No, and you present a nice, because you have a lot of information and details that we need. Because if we're going to have these real discussions, we can't just talk about history. We got to talk about history in terms of what we're doing in the present.
In context, absolutely.
Yeah,
it has to be in context.
We got to move.
Yes.
You know, and listen, let me say this. This is from my side. And I need to say this. Even though I'm strong in talking about the Wahhabis, I'm not talking about us as a people. I'm talking about things that's hurting us as a people.
Absolutely.
So there's no hostility towards individual may be a Wahhabi. That's not my thing. I understand a lot of us don't know what happened to us and don't realize it. We're sincere. We want to be on the Sunnah. We want to follow Islam properly, just like the nation, people that came in the nation thought they were doing, just like the people who came in the Moore Science Temple, just like the people who came in the Ansars, and every other deviant movement at the offices of deviant. We all trying to follow the right stuff. But people keep giving us the hoodwink job. And we have to be like Malcolm. And when we realize we're wrong, hey, that's wrong. We got to fix it.
And you know, that
you can hear you.
I said that was one of the things that was the most courageous about him, was to stand up and then say in front of the world, hey, I was wrong. You know, a lot of times, you know, people will buck everything, even to the point of going down the wrong path just so they don't have to say, hey, I was wrong. The ego is a powerful thing, you know, but for him to be able to stand up and say, hey, I was wrong and it's time to pivot to another direction, that takes real courage and
You know,
sincerity.
when I think about Hajj Malik Shabazz on that particular point that you just made, Akil Fahad, my mind also jumps to Imam Abu Hassan al-Ashari, because they was the same in that. Abu Hassan al-Ashari being the Mu'tazila for most of his life.
Mm.
And then Allah opening his heart and his ego not getting in the way. And then him standing on the minbar that he used to preach that deviant stuff from, saying, I was wrong. And we going this way now. So I think of Malcolm and him in that same light. A lot of people can't do that. A lot of people be like, no, I was always saying that. Y'all just didn't understand me, right? That's the way most of us would do.
And here's the only thing, and I think what we don't realize, that we're trying to use Islam as a mechanism for our freedom, which we've always been doing as Black people in America, right? That's why most of us came to Islam, trying to get away from this corrupt society and oppression, right? But if you give us an Islam that is not our Islam, it won't work.
It won't work.
Right?
And it shows that it's been detrimental in many regards.
Imam Amin.
Yes.
Before Akil Fahad closes out for us, because
no, I'm done. Go ahead. I'm done.
No. But before we get out of here, I know we done drove the point home, but sometimes people don't understand. And a lot of times people want marching orders when we finish having a long conversation or unpacking a topic and stuff like this. So my question to you is, even though it's already been said, right? My question to you is, what can all of our family that joined us tonight do after we log off here to affect change like Malcolm did? How can we build like he did?
I say step one. The first thing Malcolm did before he did anything was he learned. So his whole time when he heard the message, he studied the message hard, well, memorized his lessons. Even before he came home, he had his lessons right. So I think the first thing we need to do is learn our religion properly, which we have free classes every day. And there's no day where there's not lessons going on in this platform. The books that are being taught, all this stuff, we got to master. We have to master it. That's number one. Number two, once we learn, we have to commit ourselves to implementing what we learn. Number three, we got to do what Imam Faheem said, that إنما المؤمنون الذين آمنوا بالله ورسوله ثم لم يرتابوا وجاهدوا بأموالهم وأنفسهم في سبيل الله أولئك هم الصادقون. The real believers are those who believe in Allah and His Messenger. That's the knowledge. Thereafter, never doubt. That's the conviction. And then struggle with their wealth and their persons in the path of Allah. That's the work. And that أولئك هم الصادقون. These are the truthful. That's the success. So it's a belief, a conviction, a practice, and then a result. So for some of us, we got to buy in. So if we haven't bought into what we're doing, then first you need to learn, because you're never going to buy in if you don't learn. You have to learn, and you have to see truth as truth and falsehood as falsehood. Then you can build. Then once we're doing all of that, we already have our platform. We already laid out in your own city, in your own town. Gather the one or the two or the three people you got. Say, these are the people that are learning with me. We're doing it. Can one of y'all come out? Can all of y'all come out? Can we go do some fishing together in each individual place? And we started that process. We've been doing it. We go to different cities. But you have to do the work on the ground. Once you do the work on the ground, what you're missing, we're going to be the forces to come support you. And then that's individually on each level in each city. Then collectively, which we're doing is what we do with this money every week. The money you got to pay up. That is the money we use to go do the work like Malcolm did. He had that funding from the nation. He had that funding from people. We need that funding. Our individual money is only going to go so far because all of us have families. And because we don't get the support we get as a people, we end up taking the money to take care of our family, to take care of the masjid, to do our own trips. And then therefore, that's not going to be sustainable. It's only going to go but so far. And if you remember, to show you how far it go to the movie, Malcolm X, the movie. And there was a beautiful line in there, a scene where Sister Betty Shabazz went off on Malcolm about you doing everything for the nation and what about us? And I know all of us as imams, we know that talk, right? That our wives say, ho, 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 ho. We all know that talk. You putting everything in the mosque, what about us? So the movie, The Life of Al-Hajj Malik Shabazz, is a direct reflection of what Black imams go through every day, right? So that's the steps. And then as we're every day talking, we're doing it. We start going to city to city to city to city. We're building up people. Right now, every day, we have hundreds of people listening and learning. We got to bring that stuff together to support them on the ground, right? And some of us, we're going to have to free these imams to that's all they do. You have to free them. You can't have your imam working for Mr. Charlie talking about he's working for the da'wah. It's not going to work. Mr. Charlie takes up an average of 12 hours a day. Let's do the math. If you work for Mr. Charlie, you average work 8 hours a day. Then you have your travel time depending where you work out. Let's give that a half an hour coming in, a half an hour going normally, right? Average. Then you have your time getting together. Let's give you a half an hour to get yourself together to get ready to go. And then a half an hour to calm down after coming. That's 12 hours a day. And if you don't have a good career that makes good money, you have to do some overtime and some days off. So where's your time for da'wah? You still got to take care of your family. You still got to do with your family. Where's your time for da'wah? Tell me, where at? That's why our masjids look the way they look, because that's the plight of the African-American Islam imam. That's what he's doing and trying to run the masjid, how it's going to work. That's why our masjids are closed. That's why our masjids are not growing. That's why they're struggling, because we don't understand the necessary how to build, which the whole conversation was builders. Somebody got to be free to build.
May Allah reward you. That's what I wanted from you. So even if somebody doesn't watch the whole segment today, no matter what segment they see or listen to, at some point they're going to see the methodology that has been proven historically to work in this country whenever our people need to build.
And that's another thing. Wait a minute. I got to add another point to that. What else we need to do? We also need to build at the same time for our future. So we need people that is engaged in learning so that when they're on the job, they already know. So we need to be producing students that are becoming learning and scholarly before they become leaders. So there is that need to support education for people to learn so that when they become in the position of leader, they don't have to learn on the job. That aspect of it too. So supporting students and seekers of knowledge and training them, and also supporting people's education in the secular world, because those ones who have careers and businesses are going to be the ones that fund those students in the masjid as well, because we can't do like they used to do. We can't go do no crime. So we have to think also on an economic and career level that we produce students. So we need grants and we need scholarships. We need all that stuff. So all that costs money. to do all that. And when we think about it all, we need to help develop businesses and training people on how to be entrepreneurs, because everybody working for Mr. Charlie is not going to work. We need some real independent money to build our nation. So all that is to be taken, and all of those movements understood all of those things. And Allah knows best.
Alhamdulillah. Any last words, Imam Faheem?
I hope it's not a matter of if we can't have the house, he can't have it neither.
Oh, wait a minute. Let me add this
that
last
quote
point.
probably flew over a lot of people's heads.
Yeah.
One point. Let me take that down. We got the African American Islamic Summit coming up. Let me give you the link where we're going to sit down and discuss all this. I hate to cover faces, but please spread this. Where's the link?
You better get your hands off me. Let it burn.
So we got the African American Islamic Summit coming, right? The first weekend of May. So please, everyone, get your tickets, attend, because we really want to build on this and lay it all out. We're committed to doing it. We definitely need your support and your help. So there's the link for the summit, and it's going across. Spread it. Please spread it. Right now, we're up to all the speakers that were there last year. They're all returning and geared up. So that is our next mission. So someone asked, when is the next thing at Masjid Muhammad? This is it. This is the next major event, which is our yearly gathering. And we left the barbecue off so everything can be concentrated on the summit. Inshallah. Okay, with that, Akil, you get the honor of closing us out.
No. Someone else do it.
It don't got to be complicated, brother.
Ah,
Be something small. It can be in English, brother. We black, brother. We whatever you got, we accept.
God bless and good night. Thank you for coming out.
That works.
Bismillah Surah Al-Fatiha. Barakallahu bikum. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.